Today we are treating on the topic organization of life. Large multicellular organisms are made up of macromolecules that builds up and therefore makes them complex organisms. Simple macromolecules builds and we have multicellular organisms that are complex in evolutionary advancement. Organization of life is the existence of life from simple unicellular organisms to complex multicellular organisms. Remember, I made a point. I said that organisms, the organization of life ranges from the cell to the tissue to the organ or organ systems. And your system. Some organisms can exist as a single cell, meaning they are capable of existence as a single cell. They can survive and exist and thrive as a single cell. An example of organisms that exist as a single cell are amoeba and paramecium. Some other multicellular organisms can also exist independently, but as multicellular organisms. And examples of that includes your Spirogyra. They exist as filaments. The Spirogyra exists as a filament. The Spirogyra and your Zygnema are examples of organisms that exist as filaments. Now, we are still on the cell level of organization. There are different types of cell. I made mention of the fact that some organisms are capable of existence as a single cell. This means that they will have some inclusions in the cell that will help them carry out their activities successfully and thrive. Inclusions like several cell organelles, like your Golgi bodies, your chloroplast, your contractile vacuole, your vacuole. All this helps the organism as a single cell. Remember, amoeba and paramecium are examples of these organisms that exist as simple cell. All these several cellular inclusions called cell organelles helps them to carry out their functions effectively. In types of cells, we have cells in animals and we have cells in plants. In the animals, we have the red blood cells, we have the white blood cells, we have the nerve cells, the epidermal cells, the sperm cells, the egg cell, also known as the ovum, and of course, the muscle cells. There are several other types of cells in animals. We also, in plants, there are several other types of cells. Your palisade cell. Now, let's come to tissues. Tissues are aggregates of cells, similar cells that perform a similar function. They're a collection of several cells that perform. These cells must be similar in nature. They must be similar in nature. They perform a similar function. Examples of tissues, you have tissues that falls in plants and in animals. Examples of plant tissues includes your vascular tissues, your strengthening tissues, your photosynthetic tissues, your epithelial tissues, your packing tissues. Now, under your vascular tissues, you have your xylem and your phloem. What are these needed for? What are these needed for? They are needed for the what? Transportation of materials in plants. Your strengthening tissues, such as your what? Your parenchyma, your collenchyma, and your sclerenchyma are strengthening tissues in plants. Your photosynthetic tissues, such as your what? Mesophyll tissues, carry out the what? Function of photosynthesis in plants. They have the pigment chlorophyll in them to be able to what? Carry out this what? Function. You have your epithelial tissues and you have your packing tissues. This helps to what? Pack things together, hence the name packing tissues. Let's talk about the what? Animal tissues. We have what? Your epithelial tissue. Remember that the blood is a tissue because it comprises what? The white blood cells, red blood cells, and even the platelets. You have the connective tissues, the nerve tissues that carry out the function of what? Transmitting nervous impulses. You have the muscle that helps in what? Locomotion. And of course, the skeletal tissues that helps in what? Supporting. Some organisms are capable of existence in the tissue at the tissue level. An example of that organism is the what? Hydra. The hydra is made up of two body layers, the endoderm and the ectoderm, with a middle mesoglea, which is non-living. This hydra as a tissue exists as a tissue, can exist independently. Let's talk about what? The word organ level. The organ level. Organ is a collection of tissues that perform different functions. Examples of organs include the heart, the kidney, the liver. All these falls under the animals or can be found in animals. You have the leaves in plants, the roots, stems, flower. All these are examples of what? Organs in plants. Just a quick reminder. In the strengthening tissues in plants, it is of note, it is imperative that I mention the parenchyma, the collenchyma, and the sclerenchyma. These fall under what? We call them what? Strengthening tissues. We call them what? Strengthening tissues. What about the system level? A system is a collection of what? Organs that performs a singular function. A system is the collection of several organs that perform a singular function. We have the digestive system, We have the reproductive system. We have the circulatory system. We have the nervous system. The digestive system helps in the breakdown and assimilation of what? Food substances in the organism. The reproductive system ensures the continuity of life. The circulatory system helps in the transporting of what? Materials all over the organism. The nervous system helps in the what? Transmission of what? Impulses. Take notes. Transmission, interpretation of impulses. This is what the nervous system is concerned with. Now, remember that organization of life ranges or is from the cell level, starts from the cell level to the tissue level, to the organ, and to the system. The complexity of organisms has its advantages and disadvantages. When organisms are complex, such as large multicellular organisms, it comes with its advantages, and it also has its disadvantages. What are some of the advantages of complexity in organisms? 1, complexity leads to specialization. This is where a special cell or a special tissue or a system carries out specific functions. And of course, that is division of labor. Advantages, one other advantage of the complexity in organism is that it leads to division of labor. Division of labor leads to efficiency. It leads to what? Efficiency. It also comes with many of its disadvantages. Simple processes like your diffusion and your osmosis may not be effective as the organism becomes complex or grows larger in size. I repeat, simple processes like diffusion, osmosis may no longer be effective as the organisms grow larger in size. Hence, why we need various types of systems, such as the transport system, circulatory system. A single unicellular organism, like the amoeba, can perform all these processes. It can reproduce. It doesn't need a special reproductive system to do that. It can excrete its what? Waste products using the what? Contractile vacuole, which is a cell organelle in the amoeba. The breakdown of an organ in a system may lead to disruption. In the excretory system, where you have the lungs and the kidney. You have the lungs and the kidney. The breakdown of one of these organs may lead to the disruption of the excretory system. Now, it is very important that I make mention to you that what? Surface area to volume ratio in simple processes like diffusion, osmosis must be large for simple processes like diffusion and osmosis to be effective. Let me explain that with an illustration. If you have a cube with side 1 centimeter, and another cube do not mind the size, of size 2 centimeters. For reference purpose. And another cube of size 3 centimeters. What are we trying to do? We are trying to explain what it means for surface area to volume ratio to become ineffective as organisms grow complex, or as organisms become complex. This is a cube of size 3 centimeters. Surface area to volume ratio is what we are trying to explain. Why surface area deals with the rate at which there are exchanges of materials between cells. Volume ratio deals with the what? The usage and the building up of materials between cells. So, surface area will be responsible for the expulsion of waste materials or the coming in of materials that is necessary or required for the building or production of some materials in the cell. What is the formula for area of a cube? It is L squared. The total surface area of a cube is 6L squared. 6L squared. Let us therefore calculate the total surface area of this cube using the dimension given in the illustration above. You have a cube of one side, 1 times 1, because it is L squared, the area. But the total surface area, because a cube has 6 sides, 1 times 1 is equal to 1 times 6, because we are using surface area. We give you 6 centimeters squared. 6 what? Centimeter squared. Let us go to the volume of this material. Volume is length times length times length, which simply means length cubed. Length cubed. Remember, from the dimension given in the illustration above, it is 1 centimeters. So 1 times 1 times 1 will give you what? 1 centimeter cube, or 1 cubic centimeters. If we are to now take the surface area to the volume ratio of the cube 1, surface area to volume ratio of cube 1, surface area to volume ratio of cube 1 would be what? Are you with me? Remember, when we calculated the surface area, it is 6 square centimeters, and the volume is 1. Let us go to the illustration 2, which is the second cube. What is the dimension of the second cube? It is 2 centimeters. We want to explain what it means for what? Simple processes like diffusion and osmosis that depends largely on the surface area to volume ratio to be effective. That is what we are trying to explain. Now let us take cube 2. Looking at cube 2, this is cube 2. Surface area, that surface area will be what? length square is 2 times 2, which is 4, times 6, which is 24. Let us talk about the volume now. What is the volume? The volume, remember, is length times length times length, which will give us what? 2 times 2 times 2, which gives us what? 8. And what is the surface area to volume ratio of cube 2? Surface area to volume ratio of cube 2 will now be what? 24 root 8. 24 ratio 8. And if you are to express this in lower stem, so that gives us 24 ratio 8 gives us 3 ratio 1. Did you notice something? The surface area to volume ratio has decreased from 6 ratio 1 to 3 ratio 1 because of the what? Increase in size. Let us test the last one, which is the third illustration, the third cube. The surface area, total surface area of the third cube will be what? 3 times 3. That's 9. And times 6. 9 times 6 is 54 squared centimeter. Now the volume will be what? Length times length times length. And that gives us 3 times 3 times 3. And that gives us what? 27. So that'll be 54. So surface area to volume ratio of the third cube, SA to VR of cube 3 will now be what? Will be what? 54 divided by 27, or 54 ratio 27. 54 ratio 27 is what? That will be 2 ratio 1. That will be 2 ratio 1. So you can now see that as the cube grows larger, the surface area to volume ratio reduces. What is the implication of this? It simply means that what? There will be lesser movement. That is the slower rate at which materials come in or go out of the cell compared to the faster ways with which materials are being built. So as the organism continues to grow in size, the surface area to volume ratio becomes ineffective. Remember, a quick recap. Organization of life. We said that organization of life is the existence of life from simple unicellular organisms to complex multicellular organisms. And we made mention that what some organisms are capable of what independent existence as a single cell. Organization of life ranges from the cell to the tissue to the organ and to the system. These are what comprise this. From this level, you have the organism. We mentioned the different types of cells. We mentioned the red blood cells found in man or animals, white blood cells, the nerve cells, epidermal cells, sperm cells, egg cells, and muscle cells. We even mentioned also the tissues. And remember that the tissue is an aggregation of several cells that perform a similar function. Types of tissues, both in plants and in animals. You have your vascular tissues in plants, strengthening tissues in plants, photosynthetic tissues. An example of a photosynthetic tissue is the mesophyll tissue. You have the packing tissues also in plants. In animals, you have the what? Epithelial tissues, which lines the surface of what? Organs, and it acts as a protective function. The blood, which has the white blood cells, the red blood cells, the platelet. Connective tissues, the nerve tissues, the muscle tissues, and the skeletal tissues. I also mentioned that's what? From the tissue level of organization, you go to the organ level of organization, which is more advanced than the tissue level. Some organisms, and we said that what? An organ is a collection of tissues that perform different functions. Examples of organs in animals are the heart, the kidney, the lung, the liver. In plants, you have the leaves, the roots, the stems, and flowers. We mentioned some of the advantages and the disadvantages of complexity. We said that complexity leads to specialization. Specialization leads to division of labor. And of course, division of labor leads to efficiency. The organism is able to grow to its desirable size because of the presence of what? Systems that perform a singular function. In disadvantages, simple processes like diffusion and osmosis is no longer effective as the organism grows larger or becomes complex. Why? Because of the concept of the surface area to volume ratio I explained. Said the breakdown of an organ in a system could lead to a disruption. Now, because of the several tissues that perform the function, or there could be wear and tear in disadvantages. There could be wear and tear. Organization of life is the topic. And this is where we draw the curtains for today. Thank you.